Mahalo for joining us tonight for this Kailua Legislative Town Hall. I'm Bill Hicks, the chairman of the Kailua Neighborhood Board, and I'll be serving as tonight's moderator. On January 27th, there was a Kaneʻohe Town Hall, and there will be an upcoming Waimanalo Town Hall, but tonight it's Kailua's turn. Joining us tonight are Senators Chris Lee and Jarrett Keohokalole, as well as Representatives Lisa Marten, Patrick Branco, and Scot Matayoshi, as well as our new Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina. Our elected officials will be responding to questions from Kailua residents. Many questions were submitted in advance, but throughout tonight's town hall, you may ask additional questions using a question link that is in the chat window. Please remember to specify who you are asking your question to. This town hall will be in session until 8 p.m. We'll lead off with opening remarks, and then we'll address the questions that were submitted in advance, and then continue on with questions that come up tonight in chat. We'll try to get to all of the questions. That might be a challenge, but if we do run out of time, our elected officials have all promised that they will follow up with an email or a phone call on every unanswered question. So please be sure to include your contact information in the question link that is found in chat. Also, mahalo for everyone's patience with the Zoom technology. Some are very used to it. Some are fairly new to it. Right now we have 87 participants, which is a terrific turnout. So that we can identify each other, everyone's requested to include your name on your Zoom window. Opening remarks will be up to 3 minutes per legislator. And so let's now begin with Senator Chris Lee.
Thanks so much, Bill. And for everybody, Chris Lee, I represent Kailua. Fortunately, was just elected this past November to the state Senate, so happy to be here. I'm actually serving as the transportation chair for the state Senate this year, which means all of the bills that deal with transportation, highways, airports, helicopters, harbors, that sort of thing, fall into that area of responsibility. So we've been working on a lot of those issues so far, but beyond that, this year, obviously, we have a huge number of issues just in our local community, from traffic safety to COVID to all the sorts of tourist issues that have come up. I just want to talk about real quickly a couple bills that I had put in that collectively our sort of Windward team has been working on. One was, of course, funding for local projects that continues to be priority projects for schools and roads, and a lot of folks have been collaborating on that sort of thing. But also there were two bills which have now moved out of committee, one to require transparency in commercial tour operations for helicopters so that they can report where they're flying when. Right now, none of that information is reported to the state. So hopefully we can make recommendations to the FAA based on collecting some of that. And secondly, creating increased penalties for tour buses that tend to stop at dropping off tourists at beaches and that sort of thing. It's one thing if you do it once or twice, but for those who repeatedly do it over and over again, the bill would increase penalties up to about $5,000 per violation. Beyond that, I don't want to take a lot of time. I know everybody's diving into a whole bunch of questions which are piling up in the chat box. So that said, it's just an honor to be here and talk with everyone. And hopefully we're going to have a good session, assuming that we are going to have some help coming from the federal government for COVID relief. So our budget isn't chopped too badly, and we can actually retain teachers in schools and make sure the resources are going to our local first responders and everything else that's a priority for our community. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Bill, and everybody else. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Senator Lee. We'll move on to Senator Jarrett Keohokalole.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you, Bill, for agreeing to moderate, and thank you to my fellow legislative members for putting this together. I'm Jarrett Keohokalole. I represent Senate District 24, which is Mauka Kailua, basically everything Mauka of the boat dealership, including parts of Kailepulu, and then Kaneʻohe out to Ahuimanu. I serve as the chair of the Senate Committee on Health, and over the interim from the beginning of the pandemic, I was a member of the Senate Special Committee on COVID-19, and I also serve as the Majority Floor Leader in the Senate. This is it's a really exciting and large responsibility to be chair of the Health Committee during the pandemic. Part of that came from the work that we did on the Special Committee on COVID-19, which included calling for the mandatory 14-day quarantine on airport arrivals back in March, all the way into the contact tracing controversy toward the end of the summer. I will be the lead chair responsible for the federal funding that's expected very soon to address continuing ongoing COVID operations, but also the vaccination plan. Senator Schatz announced yesterday that FEMA will be providing up to $175 million of reimbursable funds for our state vaccination plan, which was a really significant piece of good news. We are still limited in capacity. We can do about 80,000 doses a week from a capacity standpoint, and we're receiving about half of that. So working on that, working on continuing COVID operations like contact tracing and testing. And I have a number of bills in place to restructure the Department of Health to make sure that we're continuing to adapt to this significant budget downturn situation, especially making sure that we can use efficiency and around our programming for homeless individuals and folks receiving services from the Department of Health. So happy to be on with you folks, and looking forward to the questions.
Mahalo, Senator Keohokalole. We'll move on to Representative Lisa Marten.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm so thrilled that so many people were able to tune in. It's great to speak with you. I wish everyone could come and visit us at the Capitol. We have really nice offices set up and we can't host anyone. It's an exciting experience to be there, but very humbling, especially for someone at my age to suddenly be a beginner and be the one who really doesn't know anything. But it's a very steep learning curve. I am learning a lot. I did dive in and am supporting a lot of bills, introduced a bunch, and some of them are still alive. So that's really exciting for me. So I'm fingers crossed they make it all the way through. I just wanted to remind people that a lot of what we do, although I'm of course just beginning to do it, is not to do with legislation, but it's just helping individuals. And so we are helping individuals with all kinds of problems. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a Hawaii 5-0 episode, and but with unemployment, different types of issues, and you folks can call our offices and we'll help if we can. And the other thing we do is programs in the community, ongoing things that don't require legislation. And that's another thing that is more familiar to me and I'm really excited to work on. So I'll just wait for your questions. Aloha.
Mahalo, Representative Marten. We'll move on to Representative Patrick Branco.
Aloha, everyone, and good evening. It's great to see such a great turnout tonight. I'm very fortunate and excited to be a freshman in the state legislature, especially to represent my hometown. It's a great honor. This year, I have the pleasure of serving as the vice chair for the Water and Land Committee and serving on the Corrections, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee, as well as Finance. One thing when it came to developing legislation for our community, we have a unique community in the sense that we have a beautiful bay, we have great beaches, as well as amazing wetlands. So when I was thinking of what affected our community, how do I make sure we preserve what we have in our community? And so several things that I've been working on, for example, is House Bill 410, which would be a pilot program encouraging students to part of their curriculum to plant trees. And it just passed its first hearing. So as Representative Marten said, it's very new and it's very exciting for us. And to see bills of ours moving forward, it's a great feeling. Also, as our other legislators have said, it's a lot of reaching out to the community, talking to our community, and working with our community. And so please always reach out to my office. You can reach us at 586-6480 or email us at repbronco@capital.hawaii.gov. And so I don't want to stall any further, and I'm excited for the questions. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Representative Bronco. Just an administrative note to whoever is the host on this. I would ask that this be recorded. We want to preserve this, and although there's a record button here, I can't do anything because it says ask the host to record. So
yep,
please do record.
Recording right. We'll have a copy of this for everybody.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you. We'll move on now to Representative Scot Matayoshi.
Hi, aloha, and good evening, everyone. Scot Matayoshi. I represent a bigger chunk of Kaneʻohe, but I also represent the Kailua neighborhoods of Olomana and Maunawili. This is my second term, so I'm just starting my third year. Still a lot to learn, still making mistakes, and trying to get things right. I'm making two big pushes this year. One of them is for a flavored vaping ban to kind of get that situation under control. Unfortunately, those bills have kind of petered out. I think it's partially due to the pandemic and just the situation we're in at the Capitol. Another big push I'm making is to try to get our agricultural industry back up and running. And to that end, I've introduced some legislation, one of which I really like and is still going on. It's to require the state to make gradually larger purchases of local agriculture or local produce with its spendings to eventual goal of 50% by 2050. So if that passes through the House and the Senate and is signed into law, then I'm hoping that we're going to have a lot more money going to local agriculture, which is going to allow our local farmers to produce at better volume and then better prices for us and really get our food production up and running again. But I do want to take a more nuanced approach to agriculture, which I can talk about later as well. I'm also working on some more local issues. If for you Olomana people in the audience right now, if anyone knows about the Uluhaku Place mess that happened, that bill is still going through to try to fix and prevent those problems from happening in the future. It's going to require, the big part of the bill is to require DPP to foreclose on properties that are in violation after a 90-day period. So they have notice, 90-day period to start corrections, then if another 90-day period, so if half a year passes, then it forces DPP to act just so the neighborhood and the community can have some light at the end of the tunnel, some relief to the terrible situation that they're placed in. Other bills too, but I don't want to take up too much time. Looking forward to this.
Mahalo, Representative Matayoshi. And last but by no means least, our new Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina. You're muted.
Thank you so much, Bill. Aloha mai kako. My name is Esther Kiaʻāina, the new council member for District 3, which covers Waimanalo, Kailua, Kaneʻohe, and a sliver of Kahalu'u. And I'm pleased to be here tonight to be able to join my colleagues in providing a united front and working collaboratively at both the state and county level on the multitude of issues that we face. I know Congressman Kahele has his staff, Haraz Makaula, has been at a lot of the neighborhood board meetings, including Kailua. And so we are hoping to strengthen our ties with our federal representative as well. I am currently the vice chair of the city council, as well as the vice chair of the Committee on Zoning and Planning. And I am the chair of the Committee on Housing and the Economy, as well as members of the Budget and Transportation Committees. One of the reasons I wanted to chair Housing and the Economy is because of my interest in addressing affordable housing issues at all levels of income. So that, of course, will include our homeless population. And one of my priorities is to look at the utility of our city and all of their lands to help increase the production of affordable housing units. And I'd like to work with our state counterparts to have them do the same thing at the state level. And why is that advantageous to all of us. It's because it decreases the cost, of course, for us to be able to lease the land out to developers and use the multitude of tools available for them to incentivize them and provide the production of affordable housing units. On the economy, as Senator Lee talked about, with regard to hopefully the next round of federal funding, on the economic revitalization part, it's critically important for the federal government to give another influx to both the state and county government so that we in turn can provide individual relief as well as small business relief to everyone in order to help us in economic revitalization efforts. I also care about long-term development. I am a critic of the Honolulu County's efforts in economic development. If you compare them to other counties, I feel that it is wanting. In fact, we don't even have an agricultural component. And so that is something that I'm looking at. Of course, the office is within the office of the mayor right now. So I likely would have to encourage it and provide funding in the budget. But every time someone tells me, don't worry about it, it's a state or federal issue, I just don't buy that, okay? So I agree with and support Representative Matayoshi's efforts on the agricultural front. And I commit to seeing what we could do at the county level to supplement that. I've been working with the Hawaii Farm Bureau, who have told me that what we could do in order to be non-duplicative is to look up perhaps gap financing for those areas that farmers fall in the cracks for, and that's something we might be able to look at. And lastly, I think everyone knows that with regard to specific issues, and there are a multitude of them because we've already received a lot of questions, the Kailua boat ramp has been my priority, not only since the outset, but even before I was officially sworn in. And we are fortunate to have, as the directors of the Parks and Rec, Laura Thielen, of course, our former senator, as well as Alex Kosloff, who is the director of design and construction. And because of them and the personal commitment of the mayor and their managing director, as you know, we currently have a fence around the boat ramp. And I know that they heard everyone's pleas with regard to an emergency short-term repair versus just a long-term repair. And that's something that we're looking at. But again, Bill, thank you so much for your chairmanship of the neighborhood board, as well as the individual pleas from constituents across Kailua to tell the mayor that the Kailua boat ramp is critically important for our community. So again, I'm pleased to be on tonight.
Mahalo, Councilmember Kiaʻāina. You're off to a very fast running start. All right, well, we're up to 122 participants now. I'll just repeat that we're going to address the questions submitted in advance first, and then the questions that are submitted via the chat Q&A second. We're going to try to get to all of them, but if we don't, the representatives have promised that they will respond to each unanswered question. All 6 of our elected officials have access to all of the questions that have been submitted tonight. So yeah, about 47 were submitted in advance. There are 14 now that have been submitted online. Many of them overlapped or somewhat duplicated concerns. And so those that overlapped have been consolidated to an extent for efficiency. The first question tonight will go to both Senator Lee and Councilmember Kiaʻāina. As with so many issues that are kind of cross the lines between state and city and county, this is on the topic of improving pedestrian and bicycle safety, addressing safety hazards, extending bike lanes, raised pedestrian crossings, traffic calming, and complete streets in general. And if we will start with Senator Lee and then continue with Councilmember Kiaʻāina, please.
Sure. Thanks for that. You know, one of the things that we've been working on for many, many years in our community is dealing with the constant deaths and tragic avoidable crashes that we know have been mostly unfortunately in the news because they're students or they're elderly folks, their aunties, their uncles, their family members and friends. So we've actually been really fortunate, and I really want to go back to Laura Thielen and Cynthia Thielen and Ikaika Anderson and really give them a lot of credit for working together as a team all these years. And so we coordinated and put a lot of resources into this that now our awesome new Windward team can really pick up the ball and run with. So we had put several $1 million into these exact questions. How do we improve crosswalks? How do we improve crossings? How do we improve sidewalks, separate bikers from traffic, and all of those things? And there's actually a slew of projects right now, both at the city and the state. I know Esther's been working hard on working with the stakeholders on the city side to try and get a lot of this stuff implemented. But on the state side, there are a couple of things in particular that we've been doing. So we've funded city projects in the past, which is completely abnormal. Usually the city funds its stuff, the state funds our stuff. But frankly, when it comes to traffic fatalities, there's nothing more important. You can't put a dollar figure on it. It's not a question of whose jurisdiction is it. Is it going to be us or them or whatever? So we've sent millions of dollars to the city to help augment those projects. And there are now plans that are in the works, as well as projects in the works, to try and address the critical places that we know are difficult, like intersections along Oniava, like places along the highways. The state controls most of the highways coming into Kailua. So those projects, actually, we probably should have a community meeting at some point to go over all of them and just sort of have a big transportation update in general, because we could spend multiple evenings on it. And we have had 3 or 4 big community meetings just on traffic safety in the past 2 or 3 years that we've been collecting everybody's comments about what should be done. And now there's actually plans. The question is coming up probably later this year. What do those projects look like? How do we roll them out? And what's the timeline to implement? So rest assured, there's a lot going on there. And in the broader perspective outside just Kailua, we implemented a law about a year ago called Vision Zero, and it replicates what's being done in other countries. Oslo is a great example of a city, for example, that many years ago had implemented the same thing. And the idea is you have a vision for 0 traffic fatalities down the road. And through attrition, as you repave roads and redo sidewalks and all of that, you build better infrastructure that isn't prone to getting people killed. It separates all the users of the roads. And ultimately, this past year, they became the first city, first major modern Western city to go an entire year without a single traffic fatality. So if they can do it, so can we. And that's the long-term vision that we're starting to implement here.
Mahalo, Councilmember Kiaʻāina.
Thank you, Senator Lee, and for all of the kukua by our previous legislators as well. Keep the money coming to the city so that we can have a robust, complete streets program. We recently had an oversight hearing on the program, and so two construction projects in the works include the pedestrian crossing beacon on Kailua Road at the old Macy's, and an upgrade of the Kalapawai roundabout to permanent materials. There will also be an installation of the new traffic signal at Ku'ole and Aulike, which is actually right around the corner from me. With regard to corridor improvements, they will be Kalaheo, Oneava, Kailua Road, South Kainalu, and Ku'ule Road. And as Senator Lee said, this is a lot, and the community deserves a community meeting, which is going to be this summer. As soon as we get that date, we will make sure that we get out the word to have everybody come to provide their input. Anybody who's interested in the program, you can go to honolulu.gov/complete streets. And Noella Napoleon, who is my community liaison, will be putting that link in the chat room. Thank you.
Mahalo. So many of these questions are ones that we keep seeing at the Kailua Neighborhood Board as well. Next question also goes to Councilmember Kiaʻāina, and this concerns monster homes. Could you please address the monster home under construction at 1480 Keolu Drive? The contractor has received numerous notices of violation from the county and state, but they continue.
Thank you. Well, let me just say with regard to that specific request, which I believe came from Ms. Baderos, we have already contacted the Department of Permitting and Planning to do an investigation. And, but let me just tell you that this is a problem all throughout Kailua as well as Kaneohe, and many times it also includes those who are short-circuiting vacation rental laws. And so as many of you know, in recent years, there have been efforts by the City Council to clamp down. And I'm not quite convinced that that is enough, because I'm hearing from a multitude of constituents that they call DPP, and yet the burden is often placed on the homeowners to catch them in the wrongdoing. And so Chair Waters, as you know, cares deeply about monster homes, as do I. I oversee the committee that will have jurisdiction over both issues. So we will be having a hearing, of course, on that to see if we need to introduce legislation to close more loopholes. I know the current DPP administrator, who is going to be shortly appointed, Mr. Dino Chita, has thoughts of his own. So we're probably going to bring him in to get an idea. But for those of you who are out there and continue to have this problem, all I can say is that I could ask for an investigation on your behalf. And if you could just help in keeping the flame alive, because it's going to be our collective voices, not just my voice, right, and the City Council's voice, but all of our voices, to make it clear to the mayor and to the Department of Planning director that what is going on in our neighborhoods, that's completely changing the fabric of communities, is unacceptable. So number one, I answered that specific constituent, but I just want to say it's happening all over the place, and it's a big issue that needs to be addressed.
Mahalo. Next question, again, it's a dual question for Senator Lee and Councilmember Kiaʻāina. It's the topic of improving traffic management, specifically addressing the need for at least one traffic signal for Olamana residents to safely enter Kalanianiole Highway, probably at Ulupi'i Street by Monowili Elementary School. And then the other concern, which is where state and city roads meet, is at the intersection of Kailua Road and Hamakua Drive, where there's a request for adding left turn signals at that intersection. So we'll start with Senator Lee.
Sure. Let me say, that there's probably going to be a lot of requests for very specific fixes for this particular intersection or street corner or crosswalk, and all critically important. It may not be the best place just to spend the entire night talking about specific actions like that. So maybe if I could propose folks who do have those specific ideas, we did have a list of, I think, 100 and something that we collected over the course of the last few community meetings. And that's where a lot of the money is going that we're trying to funnel into these fixes. So if you could shoot those either in the chat or email us, I think between Esther and I, we can definitely distribute to all the other legislators, and we can tackle those one by one without getting into the weeds of the specific projects. But I think globally say that, these are all important. And I'm pretty sure in most cases, if these things haven't yet been done, either it's a funding issue or there's a conflict with something that people just haven't perhaps realized. So in any case, we can absolutely get answers from either the Department of Transportation and the state, and I'm sure the city as well, if that's all right with everybody.
And we'll also have the summer session focused on transportation for the whole community. Councilmember Kiaʻāina, anything you'd like to add on that?
No, it's just that if someone has something specific for the county, please email me. Noella is going to be putting my email contact and number in the chat room, ekiaʻaina@honolulu.gov. Again, all of the issues that seem to be arising are very specific. And so how you can help me is because we have a system at the county where we work with all of the departments, and they want specifics when we're putting it in. I can't be general, yeah? So, and of course, if you could, when you write to me, if you could put your contact information as well as telephone number. So if my staff need to call you back, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Mahalo. Next questions for Representative Matayoshi on the topic of seawalls. What can be done to prevent the loss of our beaches due to the construction of seawalls?
I think that might not be for me, since my district has 0 ocean boundaries. I think that question was probably to someone else.
If you don't mind, maybe I can jump in, and maybe Representative Marten, or if Representative Marten wanted to go ahead as well.
No, I just wanted
Yes,
to
please.
mention, Bill, I don't know if you're looking, people had kind of looked at questions and thought what was part of their kuleana. I don't know if we never had a chance to discuss, but I don't know if you're seeing that in the spreadsheet with the questions. But
Yeah, I was just following a question directed to from the spreadsheet, but actually on all these questions, so many of them cross lines that anyone who would like to amplify and add to an answer is encouraged to do so.
Well,
Patrick, do you
the
want to take
question
that one on?
was
Yeah,
originally directed at me. Let me just try to do a real quick shot at it, and then I'll pass it off to Rep. Bronco. I did sign onto a bill this year that to regulate seawalls. I mean, seawalls are incredibly destructive. I don't appreciate them being grandfathered in. I do understand the homeowners need to protect their property, but I do think that there needs to be some kind of finite lease or some kind of plan in place to deal with it. It can't be a forever thing, and it can't be that we keep building more and more seawalls until we have no beaches left. So with that, I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Scott. I actually introduced a bill, a version to look at this. Seawalls is a great concern for us. As Representative Matayoshi said, that this is eroding our beaches, and this is something that we need to do, especially for our community, that we have such a large front line on the ocean. And so unfortunately, my bill didn't go through, but I can tell you a little bit what my bill was trying to do. It was trying to force the Department of DLNR to look at new policies on granting easements as well as seawalls, and making sure that no more permits were going to be given out. So actually parts of my bill was then taken and put into Chair Tarnas, Representative Tarnas from Hawaii Island, who is the head of Water and Land, and he's actually an expert on water and land issues. He's a renowned planner in the city and, in the state. And so his bill is actually looking and working with DLNR to figure out a new statewide policy to address seawalls. And this bill is progressing forward. But this is definitely something that's very important to all of the Windward delegation, as well as many of our other representatives in the legislature.
I do want to chime in on that. Seawalls are, it's an issue that really impacts my district. We have a lot of seawalls in Lanikai or Kauhau. We also have seawalls at the end of Waimanalo towards the Sea Life Park end. And, I think that it's something that I want to preserve the beach. I also want to respect the homeowners, and it's something that I haven't had a chance to engage them in the conversation. And so that's something I do want to do. But in general, our laws are now say we can't build new seawalls. And I respect that because we do want to preserve the beach, and it's going to be complicated to deal with existing, homes with seawalls.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for Representative Marten, but I think also Senator Lee and others may want to join in on it. It's the topic of the Kawanui wetlands, and there are a number of questions that were asked. One is that DLNR is ready to begin a project to restore a portion of Kawanui Marsh. Do you support further ecologically responsible development of the marsh, such as trails for nature lovers and other cultural, educational, and recreational opportunities? And on the other side of the coin, the governor has signed off on the environmental impact statement for the wetlands master plan, which returned all of the buildings and development that had previously been deleted after extensive public comment, and what can be done to balance development with protecting this fragile resource, which is the largest wetlands in the state, but also very fragile. So Representative Marten, we'll start with you, and I think Senator Lee and others may want to join in.
Okay. Yeah, so first of all, it is really exciting to see the project going now. It's Huio Kolaupoko is doing it in collaboration with DLNR, and DLNR was able to get a federal grant, and they used matching funds. And that is what so many of us were calling for, which is restoration of the marsh itself rather than development around the edges, right? It's restoring open water, native wetland. Many of you know that I have a project that works at Hamakua Marsh, which is already, the waterway there is cleared and well managed and is an incredible breeding location for our native wetland birds. So this will create some competition. I used to always say we have the best bird view in town, and that may change, and I would be thrilled if that was the case. In terms of the master plan that was approved, you know, I think I share with a lot of people a concern about Kailua being over marketed for tourism, but I do have to say that the Native Hawaiian organizations around the edge of the wetland are the ones that for decades have been working there and have done wonderful work restoring that area. And it's really hard work. I can speak from personal experience as someone who does similar work. It's not just talk, it's a lot of sweat. And I feel that, you know, we have to trust people that have been stewards of the land over time, and also who is, you know, is working on these issues and working really hard, I can say again firsthand, to protect the wetland and the resource. And if there are particular projects that come up, they're not funded yet, so we will get a chance to weigh in on any, you know, development projects that do come up in the future. But I'm glad that at least what they're starting off with right now is restoration.
If I can jump in, Chris, if you count the boundary lines, I'm directly responsible, but Chris obviously has been a part of this dialogue along with Senator Lee, along with Representative Marten for a long time. I think it's important again to note Representative Marten's comment that although those, you know, although the update of the master plan that was just published does address some of these issues that have been issues of controversy in the community for some time, these individual projects do need to proceed through to funding, and we are in the midst of the most significant budget crisis in state history. And it's not limited to just general fund, you know, cash revenue that's devoted to general operations. It's also going to include capital monies that will be necessary to develop these projects. So we are going to have that conversation in the community as those projects queue up to be funded, because it's no small feat to get them funded through the legislative process, even if there is significant community support. And so this really is just the, you know, the starting off point of that whole dialogue. And I say that because I acknowledge that it's actually the end point of many years of dialogue just to get to the master plan process. Lots more to come.
And Senator Lee, a related part of that question was the complicated process for the proposed future dog park involving first DLNR and then Parks and Recreation at the city, and you know, who has current jurisdiction of the property, and what what can be done to cut back the mangrove and make sure that everything is done in an environmentally responsible way.
Yeah, and that project, that's something that I think we all have been working on collectively. There's land that A&B is donating to the state and county. And so we put in $3.8 million a couple of years ago to start the process of vetting the environmental issues, because that was formerly used as a base yard for construction equipment. And it turns out environmentally, it's actually pretty good. But there is a lot of that mangrove and other invasives to be removed. So part of the project would look at restoring that wetland. The other portion, of course, is a dog park and other recreational facilities that the community's been asking for a long time. Things got held up. Obviously, we had an election, so we have a new mayor, new administration at the city. So we've started beating the drums again to figure out who we need to talk to. Unfortunately, former Senator Laura Thielen is Parks and Rec director down at the city, and with our new council member and others, we want to start that discussion and figure out what the next steps are. But in short, the money is still there on the state side. In fact, we're looking at reauthorizing it, so there's a little bit more time to figure out some of the environmental stuff, which is due diligence takes time. It's not going to be overnight, but there's still a path forward, and I think everybody's been kind of excited about it.
Okay. Mahalo. Next question's for Councilmember Kiaʻāina on the topic of street sweeping. Would you support a posted once-a-month parking restriction on key Kailua streets with storm drains to allow more efficient street sweeping to minimize pollution entering our waterways?
Let's see. Well, there's two issues here. There's parking. There's the parking restrictions, and then which I've heard a lot for a multitude of reasons in a lot of neighborhoods in Kailua. Okay. Second is what was the question? Whether or not they could able to clean the streets because of not having the park. Well, first of all, I'll look into it. Right. I actually Levani Lipton took me on a site visit to many places in Kailua to tell me some of the water quality issues that have been adversely impacting Kaialepulu Pond, and that includes a lot of the lack of clearing of storm drainages and other things. So that's something I'm looking forward to. With regard to looking into, with regard to parking restrictions, and Representative Marten knows well in Lanikai, I have received a multitude of requests with regard to parking restrictions, not only in Lanikai, but a lot of the homeowners in Kalama Beach and elsewhere whose quality of life have been adversely impacted and overrun by people who are parking all in front of their in their homes. And that's something, Bill, that I don't know if the neighborhood board is looking into. I certainly am looking into it. Lanikai's association actually has recreated their a committee on parking, and they're going to be looking at that issue. So I hope I'm not trying to not answer the question. I have to look into it. I don't have any answers. I will find out from the Department of Facilities and Maintenance what the challenges are, and if they believe that it is warranted on that street, we'll look into it. But I think the other issue is overall water quality in Kailua.
Okay, very good. Mahalo. Next question's for Representative Matayoshi, and it's about asking about the need for a road usage fee for electric vehicles that don't pay gasoline taxes.
Might be someone else's question again. I think but I'm happy to respond to it. The road usage fees for electric vehicles, is that correct?
Correct.
Bill?
We have a few bills moving too.
I mean, yeah, I don't have any bills in particular on this, but I know it definitely is an issue. I believe the road usage fees for electric vehicles are somewhat higher anyway, simply because of their higher weight when compared to similar gas vehicles. Honestly, our road usage charges probably should be slightly higher for electric vehicles, since the heavier the vehicle, it actually, I believe, exponentially degrades our roads. And also they don't have to pay gas, which is great. I want us to move to electric as fast as possible, but because we're losing out on the gas end too, I just want to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share of the cost it's going to take to repair and maintain our roads. Got enough potholes already. I don't know if Representative Lee wants to speak to this further.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. Right now it's $45 for vehicle registration for your typical gas car. It's actually a $50 registration for EVs, and the legislature created that just a couple of years ago explicitly because EVs aren't contributing to the fuel tax, which pays for highway maintenance and potholes and all that stuff. So there's definitely been attempts at equity, and the Department of Transportation in the next year or two is about to come out with a study that looks at what most other places around the country are doing, which is the long-term fix, because eventually gas is going away. GM has already announced that they're going full electric, not selling gas cars anymore, just 14 years from now. So instead of relying on fuel taxes, what they're looking at is looking at vehicle miles traveled. Basically, how much do you use the road, regardless of what kind of car you're driving, and everybody will pay accordingly. Hopefully about the same amount you're paying right now, but just in a different form.
Yeah, in fact, there already is a study that the state's done. I participated in it actually, of submitting their mileage traveled on a quarterly basis, and that would be a replacement for the gasoline tax, a road usage tax. So maybe we're going in that direction.
Bill, on the spreadsheet, you can kind of ignore that column to the right. I think it's not as relevant. I think you should be directing the questions to the people whose names are in the highlighted headings for the sections.
Okay, well.
Sorry, it's a little bit confusing.
Next question is for Senator Lee or others on the topic of helicopter noise and safety. When will low altitude helicopters stop flying over residential areas?
If anybody else wants to jump in too, by all means. Tragically, we had the crash in Kailua just recently that killed a number of people, and it's certainly not the first, and it probably won't be the last. I've been serving on the helicopter task force the state put together for the last year and a half, and it became eminently clear that the federal FAA controls all helicopter regulations. The state has virtually zero power to change flight hours, flight routes, all that kind of stuff. So the FAA is on that task force. They have the power to make change, and as a community, we are trying to make recommendations for what we want to see changed. And what we discovered was there's no data that the state collects to determine where helicopters are flying and when and all of that. So that's part of the reason why we've all been working on bills. I know a number of House bills also have been introduced on helicopters. And in the Senate, we just moved out today, I want to say today, the bill that requires helicopter tour operators to report where they're flying, how many passengers they got, what altitude they're at, if they're deviating from their scheduled flight plan, and why, so that we have the data to be able to make that recommendation to the FAA later this year for what needs to change. So if you guys want to get involved, by all means, those public meetings for not only the helicopter legislation, but the helicopter task force itself are happening regularly, and we can send out links to that as well.
Okay.
So Bill, if I can add to that, Flight Radar 24 is an app available on smartphones, and actually it was updated this year to include flight information details of helicopter air traffic in real time. So Flight Radar 24, if you search it in the App Store on your smartphone and download the information, you should be able to track a helicopter if you see it in view or you hear it, and that should include some of the information that Senator Lee is discussing in the interim. Again, what you do with that information ultimately leads back to the FAA and the federal government jurisdiction, but that is an improvement to the situation as it has existed in the past, where you were not able to identify whether a helicopter flying overhead was an emergency response or just a tour operator deviating from, a specific flight path.
In general, helicopters are supposed to fly at an altitude of 1,500 feet or higher. Low cloud cover would be a reason why they would deviate from that, but generally it should be 1,500 feet, and the FAA actively encourages people to report apparent violations.
Chair Hicks, if I may.
Please.
I also, in helicopters, helicopters is something that is of great concern in our community. And what I discovered is that helicopter operators are not paying GET tax. And so I introduced a bill, House Bill 408, that would actually require helicopters to pay GET tax, because under the definition of air commerce, it is transporting people, and helicopters land and they go back to the same place. So in my definition, they do not transport people in the same way as air commerce. And so unfortunately, the Attorney General came back with an opinion and said this is more a federal level question. And so our office is working on letters to Congressman Case as well as Congressman Kahele to point this out and see if we can get changes at the federal level in the code for the Department of Transportation. This is a concern, and if helicopters are going to be operated in our community, they should be contributing and paying their taxes.
Mahalo. Next question is for Councilmember Kiaʻāina, topic of Wendy's. What can be done to stop the new Wendy's on Kailua Road from using the entry and exit on Uluopili Loop? It seems every 20 years, whenever there's a new tenant on the property, the same problem for the neighborhood arises.
Thanks for the question. You know, I was able to go up there last fall because of concerns, and I understand Senator Lee and Representative Marten were also up there. And so this is the latest that I know. First of all, I share your concerns. I would adamantly oppose either the entrance or exit being on the side of the neighborhood. It should be on Kailua Road. Having said that, the latest that I heard is that they've built a sidewalk that's actually on Uluopili Loop. And what they're doing then is they have a little hedge there, but instead of recreating a wall that will act as a buffer for the community, they are not doing that. As many know, Senator Lee had appropriated about $1 million for a wall. And the Department of Permitting and Planning is contending that it was a non-conforming use. And so there's challenges with that. And so I am going to have to follow up on that. So first, I believe that the entrance and exit will not be on the loop, but now there's still the problem that the wall that previously was there is no longer there. And, you know, I know when people hear this, they think that it's so technical, but I believe that issues like this impact the quality of life for neighborhoods. And we all should be concerned because we're not living there right now, right? And so it is an issue that the community shouldn't have to face every time a tenant is there. And so Senator Lee, I hope that I could work with you. I will find out what's going on, if they could put something up in lieu of a wall. But if you have money appropriated for that, I don't see why we can't make this happen and allow for a buffer between Wendy's and the community.
I appreciate all that. I'll note also that was the House district that I represented up until recently. Because of the way the lines are cut, it's actually now Senator Keohokalole's Senate district. So he and I have actually been working together, you know, the last couple of years on this issue. So I can't take full credit by any stretch. It's a shared responsibility over here.
Is the money still available? Okay, so I will look into what DPP can do, but I would like to work with the two of you with regard to the funding.
Yeah, it was allocated, so it just needs to be used appropriately for its intended purpose.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Mahalo. Next question for Senator Lee on beach access. There's a tension between new property owners wanting to restrict beach access by installing gates at certain places, and the public, especially locals, wanting to continue traditional beach access? How will traditional beach access be preserved?
Sure, and I'll note part of that stretch also, Representative Branco, we share that district. So I've been talking a lot. If you want to jump in, by all means, I'm happy to. But just suffice it to say, I mean, growing up in Kailua, beach access is like a God-given right. It cannot be taken away. We have an obligation to live up to the Constitution, which says you got to have public beach access every so often. So let me just stop talking for a minute and you can come back to the details later. But you want to jump in?
Yeah, definitely. This is something that many in our community is concerned about, like Representative Lee as well as myself. We born and raised, grew up, going to green walls, trying to get to the beach access, right? And so this is something of great concern to me. And I've actually been talking with Councilwoman Esther Kiaʻāina in how we can make sure that there is a peaceful resolution to this, and also from a Native Hawaiian perspective to make sure that we have access. It's very important for our families and our people to have access to the ocean. So this is something we're talking about, we're working on, and we're trying to figure it out. But I'm with Senator Lee in this, is that we have a right to the beach and it should always be open.
Can I add something to this, Bill? What I think, because of the complexity of the issue, with regard to the county's role, it would likely include, if it is not already designated public access, a condemnation will be required. So I'm wondering if maybe all of us can talk story or in concert with the neighborhood board to provide a forum with a lot of experts to talk about the various issues and both and concrete recommendations for resolution. Are you guys open to that? Because I was told that the City Corporation Council was very reluctant historically to look into condemnation of some of these properties, because in the neighborhoods where the roads were private, the condemnation would actually have to consider the condemnation of the road as well. So very complicated issue, but hopefully we can talk to some experts, including from the University of Hawaii Law School, as well as with others, to be able to have a dialogue. In the best of all worlds, I would like to think that we could have a community resolution and have some of these homeowners or neighborhoods be educated on what should be. But if not, what course can we all undertake to make it happen?
Complex issue.
I just want to point out that it's not really an issue in my district, right? So I defer to the Kailua side. Lanikai has kept all the beach accesses open. I think the community is pretty proud of that. We do have private accesses. We've never made an effort to close any of them. In Waimanalo, the same thing. All the accesses are open. So it doesn't have to be that way, right? In other communities, even where there may be some legal right to close them off, that hasn't been done.
Another complication on this that has popped up is, and it was probably brought to light with the COVID closures of Kailua Beach Park that caused people to go to other beach accesses, that Kailua Beach Park can have hours of operation and it could be closed at, I believe, 10 p.m. But other beach accesses, some of them fairly remote and open, and others in residential areas, that sometimes there's a tension when beach access in the middle of the night occurs that creates noise in the residential area. And so the beach park can close, but the other accesses, it's a trickier issue in the middle of the night. We have a natural resources question. The question is that fishery closures are happening across Hawaii and the nation that eventually could severely impact our ability to have enough fish for feeding ourselves. Are there activities on the coast that are impacting the fisheries, and how can we support fisheries as part of our economic diversification? That was directed to Senator Lee, but if anyone would like to take it, please go.
Sure, I'll jump in. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that affect it. Depending where you are on the island is different things, but chiefly there's a lot of runoff. There's a lot of sedimentation that comes out every time there's a big storm, covers reefs frequently and kills them off over time. On top of that, you got specific pollutants in some areas, high levels of bacteria and all sorts of stuff. I know in Senator Keohokalole's, the other side of his Kaneʻohe district, there's a lot of cesspools that are leaching all kinds of stuff out there. Human take is another issue, depending on where some areas tend to be subject to poaching or illegal activity, lay nets, that kind of thing. So there's, and then of course you got climate change and everything else on top of that, ocean acidification, warming reefs. So we are facing a slew of different factors that affect nearshore marine habitats, and that's something that we are struggling with. The latest report basically says, we're expected to lose most of our coral reefs in the next few decades, and that's something that there's not a whole lot we can do about. So the question is, how do we triage and figure out where we're going to really focus? There's a great example of what's happening positively on the Maunalua Bay side, around the corner from Kailua and Hawaii Kai. And there's a joint effort between conservation folks and local fisheries and fishing community groups to come together and figure out how can we properly manage this area in a way that is sustainable for the future. So there are models out there that can work. When I grew up, there was a lot more reef that was healthy, even in Kailua Bay, in between like Flat Island and the shore. And these days, it's pretty ghastly, relatively speaking, and that's only like 30 years ago. So yeah, there's a lot of factors, and we're going to have to pull together and figure out what to do about it.
And if I could just jump into, as far as diversifying our economy, I know I talked about agriculture. Aquaculture is also a big part of it. I really think that we need to look at the oceans as other fields to farm, honestly. Hawaii has a really great opportunity surrounded by ocean water that gets very deep very quickly. And I think that open ocean aquaculture is going to be a huge part of our, not only our food security, but also our export industry, which I'd like to turn the agricultural industry into. We've got very few industries that bring outside money into Hawaii. We've got basically tourism and defense. What we need is another industry that doesn't just circulate money within the economy like construction, nothing against construction, but that money that brings outside money in. Certain types of aquaculture and agriculture, I think Hawaii has a competitive advantage in, and those are the types of agriculture and aquaculture that I really want to encourage. Certain types of sea urchins, certain types of oyster spat, not growing the oysters to full size, but growing the oyster spat to ship off at higher value to places that do have the space to grow them. But we can grow them cleanly here. We can have clean broodstock here that we can sell at higher value to the rest of the world, that uses, again, our geographic isolation to an advantage rather than a disadvantage. So Kauai has a great example right now with SPF shrimp, specific pathogen-free shrimp. We also grow a ton of queen bees. I think we supply something like 60% of all the queen bees to all of Canada, just because we don't have the varroa mite on certain islands. So it's really looking for those types of plants and animals that we can do better here. Usually just more of the starter sets of animals and plants, like seed crops, to ship off to other places to grow to full size, but that will bring outside money into our Hawaii economy and also create not only field jobs, but also higher tech ag jobs as well. So that led a little bit into more traditional agriculture, but aquaculture and using our oceans for that purpose is also, I think, a key component.
Scott, if you don't mind, I concur with aquaculture, but don't forget about land aquaculture, okay? Because that's where we are now, and it has a smaller footprint than agriculture. And when the time is right, we all have to fly to Kona to go to Neoha, because Neoha has been a wonderful laboratory for aquaculture.
Definitely.
And I concur. And of course, on the windward side, we we have all of the resources here to be a premier spot for the promotion of aquaculture and horticulture.
Yeah, actually, Esther, I should talk to you. We decommissioned the sewage treatment plant in Kaneʻohe. It's got these huge cement tanks.
Yeah,
that
at
are,
the fish pond, by the fish pond, by Herb Lee.
yeah,
Yep.
by Herb Lee's fish pond. So if you want
Yes.
to try to touch base later, they've
Yeah,
got
so
a
we
plan
can
to grow
transfer
a
it.
ton of fish protein.
And
Let's talk later offline about that.
yeah, I've already identified federal funding to help in the startup if they want, if Herb wants to go there. So we'll help at the state and federal, state and county level, and then I'll help get the federal funding to kickstart it.
Yep, sounds good. Let's touch base. Thanks.
Thanks.
Next questions for Representative Branco. The topic is homelessness and affordable housing. What measures are you working on about the problem of homelessness in Kailua? And then a related question, what efforts are underway for public assistance of affordable housing projects in Kailua?
Thank you, Bill. So for homelessness is an issue that's been affecting our community and it's been growing. Every morning when I'm driving on my commute, I've been counting the homeless individuals as I go. And on average, I count about 5. And I live in the middle of Coconut Grove and I head out. And so what I started doing was I started looking at all the different agencies that are involved, right? I looked at Castle Hospital, I met with them, I spoke with IHS, I spoke with our police department, and I also spoke with the governor's representative, Scot Matayoshi, on homelessness. And what I've discovered is that there is, my background's in economics, right? So I look at it as kind of a supply chain type of issue. And so what I noticed was, especially around Castle Hospital, especially when I was sign waving, I would see a homeless individual come out of Castle Hospital, be put at the bus stop, and they would either start walking into Kailua or they would catch the bus. And it always made me think, like, what's happening? What's going on, right? Why isn't there's a kind of a wraparound service? And so when I spoke with the governor's office, they had said, I was like, what can I do in my capacity to help? And they had shared with me, don't cut our budget. And to me, that was an unacceptable answer to me. I was like, come on, help me out, what I'm going to do. So what I decided was, as I mentioned, I met with all the different parts. And so for one example, the individual that was by Jack in a Box, there was a homeless woman. She started piling up her boxes. People couldn't use the mailbox. And so I was like, how can we help her? I started getting a lot of constituent complaints. And so what I did was I contacted HPD and I also contacted Scot Matayoshi, and then we were able to find a spot for her in one of the shelters through IHS, and HPD was able to move her. And so if you're wondering where she went, she was able to get a spot in the shelter. And so this is the type of thing that needs to happen when it comes to homelessness, is we have to connect the dots. We have to get all the organizations that have different pieces to start working together and then make sure there's a full wraparound service at the end. And so I'm new to this issue, but this is what I'm doing. I know Representative Matayoshi has been working on this. I know Senator Keohokalole has been working on this, but this is the type of things that I see that needs to happen, is we need to connect the dots to make sure we're helping our homeless individuals in our town.
Can I jump in?
Please.
Hi. So so just to follow up on what Patrick was saying, when we were sign waving, it became clear to me that some people didn't make it past the bus stop. They stopped right there. And it was actually really sad to see people getting off the night shift at Castle exhausted, and they couldn't even sit down at the bus stop because it had been soiled and there was somebody there with, mental health issues that wasn't accessing any care. And it turns out, in talking to people, that Queens has a pretty good discharge system where people automatically go transition from either the psych ward or something like that to care. And so we are talking about trying to set up something similar at Castle. And that could be one thing for Kailua. Another thing that might help Kailua, in addition to some services in Kaneʻohe, which I'm hoping that our Kaneʻohe reps will chime in on, is that there's some stuff going on in Waimanalo that is more housing based. And hopefully some of the, some people in Kailua can find their way over there as well to services where they will live for a period as they get their medication straightened out, whatever they need to help get them back connected with services and the system. So I think that there might be, some strategies.
So what we're talking about here, what Representative Bronco and Representative Marten are talking about, is an effort that has been going on for several years to link and sync, to steal the terminology from the Department of Health, the services that have always existed but have never really existed in coordination. There's a lot of siloed services that are provided out in the community, drug rehab, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, and then just homeless treatment like Housing First. And what we know from several years, what we know up to date from the most up-to-date best practices across the country and really around the world in dealing with folks who are having a hard time and who have multiple conditions that are causing them to reside on the street or suffer from debilitating and extended mental health issues, is that you gotta sync everything together, and we need to work more efficiently and effectively, and it's more cost effective to do it that way. So for example, the service providers that go into Kailua now do a unified screening assessment. So, and then they put those folks in the system so that if IHS goes out one week and they refuse to get help, and Kokua Kalihi Valley comes out and the person does get help, they can look that person up in the system, find out how many times they've been to drug treatment, how many times they've been to involuntary commitment at Castle, where they've stayed, what services they've gotten, and then direct them to exactly the type of programming that they need. Oftentimes it takes multiple tries for someone to get off the street, or for someone to get clean, or for someone to even accept help. And by making sure we're coordinating all those services more effectively and plugging the gaps, we are starting to see more effective ways of dealing with the folks who are the most chronic, the ones that everybody sees, that are fixtures in our community, that are just really difficult to get them to accept help. So a couple of things we're working on in the legislature this year. One is converting Leahi and Maluhia Hospital, which are old state hospital facilities that were used in the plantation era as the general use hospitals, for what mental health professionals call subacute bed space. So the folks who get committed to Queens or Castle, after 48 hours, they're given a mental health assessment. And if they've stabilized, they have to let them go. What they've often not had is the ability to coordinate care and put somebody in a bed, just like Rep. Marten was saying. So we have bed space available. We just haven't done a good job of mobilizing it and building out a chain so that if they've had 2 weeks after their involuntary hospitalization to stabilize, deal with their other healthcare issues, and get some services, to go into treatment, mental health or substance abuse. And so those are some of the link and sync actions that we're taking now, and also better leveraging federal funds like Medicaid to help cover the balance. So there's a lot going on, and a lot of it is really specific to Kailua. And so I think everyone on the call is very attuned to that and willing to reach out if you folks have any specific issues or folks that need help in the Kailua area.
Next question goes to Representative Marten. The topic is COVID-19 vaccines, and it's a request to provide an update on our progress with the vaccines. Are we going to continue to reserve doses for people to receive a second shot? Are we going to increase the prioritization on people 65 and older? And a related question on travel. Will we get to a point where people who have received both doses of the vaccine will be exempt from testing for inter-island travel or returning from the mainland?
Thanks. I did see a question specifically about Castle. I know that some people have been concerned. They've been wanting to get their COVID shots, which I'm so glad that people want to do that. And for a period of time, Castle was just doing the second doses. What happened is they started off super strong in January. When I was there some weeks ago, they actually vaccinated 1,000 people in just one day. So they had a lot of people coming up for the 3-week second dose after that. So they needed to take care of those folks. because the clinical trials have a certain period between the two doses. And if you mess with the length of that period, then you don't know for sure what the outcomes will be, how effective it will be. So they were honoring that. And now they're doing about 400 shots a day, and they are open again for first dose people. So they're doing people who are 75 and older, and they're also doing prioritized 1B workers. So if people register, what happens is they don't choose whether you qualify or not. The Department of Health will give them a list every day of who is qualified and who they can send the appointment for, depending on what type of work you do. But in general, I think the outlook is very good for vaccines. People are impatient to get their vaccine, but they forget that we have never had a vaccine as fast as this ever. I participated in the Pfizer trial back in September. That's less than 6 months ago. I got my shots, and now, just literally a few months later, they started opening them up to the public. That's never happened so fast. Between Moderna and Pfizer, they should be able to vaccinate, I think, 200 million Americans. That many doses have already been bought from the companies going through this by summer. And Johnson & Johnson, which is currently being reviewed by the FDA, that might be approved by the end of the month. And the US has already bought 100 million of those doses. So between just those 3 vaccines, we would cover all the population. Of course, not everybody wants to get vaccinated, and nobody is required to get vaccinated, especially not by a vaccine that is approved under an emergency authorization. However, I do hope when the vaccines become available, most people will get vaccinated, because that is what will give us the herd immunity. That's what will enable some people to choose not to get vaccinated and still be able to move on and have our schools open, our businesses open. So the news on the vaccine front is really good. And I hope people will vaccinate. And if anyone has questions, you can feel free to call my office. It's confusing to register sometimes for CASEL. They will send you to a third-party appointment site that sells like day spas. And I know that threw my dad off and has thrown a lot of people off. But if somebody needs help, especially an elderly person navigating the system, they can always call, but they can always ask us for help as well. Aloha.
Mahalo. Next question's for Representative Matayoshi. The topic is vaping. House Bill 1328 didn't meet the deadline. Are there any other bills that might address e-cigarette, flavored e-cigarettes during this legislative session?
So unfortunately, my bills did not make it very far this year. I'm going to try really hard to get them a little further along next year. I know in the Senate side, they also did not have very much luck this year in pushing it through. So most of the vaping bills at this point in the session are already deferred or dead. There are a couple bills going through that I've been trying for the life of me to look up the bill numbers. They're not my bills though, so I don't have my finger on them. But Representative Yamane introduced a bill that was very similar to one of mine that seeks to tax vaping products like we do tobacco products, which will in essence raise their price and make them less accessible for kids, for youth to afford. There's another one by Representative Johansson that I believe tries to tackle internet sales and trying to keep vaping out of the hands of youths and adolescents like that in that way too. But if you'd like to get in touch with my office, I can reference the exact bills for you, and you can feel free to submit testimony. I'm really hoping that we make some progress this year. Unfortunately, flavored vaping ban is not going to happen this year, but I'm really hoping to make a better push next year when hopefully COVID has died down a little bit.
So actually, Bill, Senate Bill 1147 is still alive. We just passed it out of the Health Committee this week. So it is moving, and I hope to cross it over. So perhaps the House will have one more chance. It does, among other things, establish a licensure and taxation system similar to cigarettes. And it does ban flavors, but in the hopes of having a legislative vehicle that we can get past this year. There is an exemption on menthol. so that there's, my feeling on it was that so that there's some parity with cigarettes, and then we can continue to have that discussion, because this is the 5th year where vaping has come before the legislature and nothing has happened. So, so Senate Bill 1147.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was looking at Senator Baker's bill, but that was probably deferred in favor of this bill. So hopefully Senate Bill 1147 will pass, and I'll try my best on my side.
Okay, next questions for Senator Keohokalole. The topic is marijuana. The question is there any pending legislation this session that might have a chance of legalizing recreational marijuana?
So I'm not sure if anything is moving on the House side. It does not look like anything will pass on the Senate side. There are a number of reasons, but I think mostly there just isn't the appetite in the Senate for that debate. I do support non-medical marijuana. Actually, Senator Lee, I'm not sure if your bill is moving. We are on the Health Committee working on expanding out the medical dispensary framework, because it has been a number of years since the marijuana dispensaries have been up and running. It does appear as though the system is working well enough that we can expand out capacity. And ultimately, as has happened in every jurisdiction that started with medical marijuana and moved to non-medical recreational adult use, there's been a conversion working off of the heavily regulated medical system into the non-medical system. And so there are a number of bills that are moving right now to address better enforcement issues related to the actual dispensary program, and then expanding out capacity for medical dispensary marijuana utilization.
Mahalo. Next question is for Councilmember Kiaʻāina on the topic of speeding vehicles, addressing more speed bumps or other traffic calming measures on busy residential streets, such as Kawanui, Kalama, and Ulupuni streets, and also excessive vehicle exhaust system and stereo noise from vehicles.
Similar to what I said earlier, I get this a lot. So people are going to have to be more specific. So again, I recommend that you contact me so that I could put in the appropriate recommendation for you. With regard to noise, I myself am very sensitive, so I have gotten that as well. So that's something I'm looking into. I live smack in town, right across the McDonald's in Kailua. So as you can imagine, I hear everything. With regard to the speed bumps, I've also heard of a lot of drag racing occurring in areas where people think that they can get away with it. So, separate from the individual request, I think I need to work with HPD to better determine certain areas, so that as we get all of these requests, and Bill, we might have to work together with the neighborhood board to probably do a more comprehensive assessment of Kailua, and maybe map out all of the requests that we get, because at the end of the day, they're going to have to do an assessment and prioritize. And so we probably have to look. I have to tell you, I get several per week, and they're all over the place.
I know. I know.
Yeah. So, but I'm never going to say no, because who am I to make a judgment call, right? But I guess what I'm saying is, if we get that type of volume, then we need to consider more comprehensively, in concert with all of you on this call, how do we prioritize that? And I believe HPD and the other county agencies would probably appreciate that as well. But again, if you can contact me specifically, Kiaʻāina@honolulu.gov.
Well, we're almost at 7:55, and we had a total of 75 questions submitted in advance and submitted during this session. Unfortunately, we could not get to all of them, but we do appreciate all 6 of our legislators concisely but insightfully answering the questions that we were able to get to. But we now need to start to wrap things up. If you missed some of the town hall or would like to view it again, a recording will be posted on our Kailua Neighborhood Board Facebook page. Once again, our elected representatives and their staffs will follow up on every question, including the many that we couldn't get to tonight. So we'll now have final closing remarks of about 30 seconds or so per legislator. We'll start with Senator Chris Lee.
Oh, thanks. I really just appreciate working with everybody. It's kind of refreshing to have such a great team of folks. We're all coordinated, and even though we're all busy in our own little silos in our own committees of the legislature, the issues that we all deal with are all hands on deck. So just want to say mahalo to everyone else who's been working diligently, and to all the House members. When our Senate bills cross over, please treat them well, and we'll do the same. And mahalo for everything.
Mahalo, Senator Keohokalole.
Thank you. I'm frantically trying to answer some of the questions by typing, but I'm a slow typer and I am inherently long-winded. So I'm going to follow back up with some of the folks who have reached out and asked for answers to some of these questions. And in the interest of being brief, my focus this legislative session is on addressing the pandemic, addressing executing on the vaccination plan, addressing the overall issues related to the pandemic, and dealing with the budget crisis, which is the most significant in state history. That includes appropriation of the numerous tranches of federal money that are coming in right now and are likely to come in as the Biden administration and Congress negotiates further action. And so making sure that that money gets deployed out into our community more effectively than took place last year, and to the members of our community that actually need it, has been an issue that I've heard loud and clear from the community. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Representative Lisa Marten.
Hi, I'm sure that a lot of people feel frustrated that their questions weren't answered. I just want to tell you that it is not just town halls. When we're available, we're always available. People that do reach out to call or email my office, people do it every day, and we are happy to respond. We're happy to talk story and try to help you out. So don't feel like it has to be during these big events only. You can reach out all the time. That's what our job is. All right. And also, if anybody wants to, I think I have like 9 bills that aren't dead yet. And if you want to support your fledgling state representative, I would be so grateful. And if you reach out to my office, we can tell you how.
Mahalo, Representative Patrick Branco.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be part of this Windward delegation. And just to reiterate what Councilwoman Esther Kiaʻāina said, that if you do reach out, please put your phone number, please put your address. Every day from 2:30 to 4, if you put a phone number in your email, I actually give a call out there, and I love to hear from you folks, and I love to talk stories. So please put in your email, and you'll be getting a call from me. So mahalo, and make sure you get vaccinated. Aloha.
Mahalo, Representative Scot Matayoshi.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. And thank you very much to Bill Hicks for taking the time out of his busy day to help us moderate. Really, really appreciate that. Again, we're going to try our best to answer as many questions as we can. But if we forget you, just reach out to our offices. You can always email any of us or call us. Since my vaping bills are mostly dead this year, I'm going to be working my hardest to push other vaping bills and also making a big push again to try to get our agriculture, as long as we're advancing the ball forward. That's what's really important. I think the best thing to come out of this town hall is me connecting with Esther to try to get that Kaneʻohe sewage treatment plant facility up and running. If we can do that, that's we're talking 300,000 pounds of fish a year. I mean, just from that alone, it's going to drastically decrease the amount of fish that we need to import from the mainland. But don't tell anyone, but people are gonna have to get used to eating tilapia. But we'll get over it. It's actually a pretty good fish. You just gotta give it a chance. So thank you everyone for coming, and hope to see you next time.
Mahalo. And Councilmember Esther Kiaʻāina.
Thank you, everyone. And Representative Matayoshi, I was actually thinking about it while we were on the call. So as you know, when I say something, I'm quite serious about it. And it's something that I already thought in my head. So it'd be the Federal Economic Development Administration who would probably help in the refurbishing of those, the fixtures there. And anyway, so similar to Representative Bronco, I'm very hands-on with trying to be responsive. A Kalaheo teacher actually emailed, and I happened to be at my desk asking about how her class could be civically engaged. So I caught her on the spot and told her I'd be willing to talk to her class, and actually recommended how we could gauge a little more. And I said, don't tell anybody, because I don't do this all the time, because most of the time I'm not at my desk. But on Fridays, I do site visits. Tomorrow I'm going to be in Maunawili talking with members of the Maunawili Estates Community Association. Last Friday, I was with the Enchanted Lakes Community Association. So please contact my office if you want a site visit. And of course, just day-to-day activities, concerns, bills, speed bumps. Let me know, and I'll see what we can do. Thank you so much.
Mahalo. And I'll put a plug in for the Kailua Neighborhood Board. Our meetings are the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. We always have an open standing agenda item for resident and community concerns. So anybody and everybody, 3-minute opportunity to raise questions and concerns and suggestions that you have for improving Kailua. We welcome them. They are the spark for many ideas that quite a few of them eventually get enacted, and with the help of our elected representatives. So please attend first Thursday, 7 p.m. We're currently doing them online on WebEx, but in March will also be WebEx, but as we're almost ready to enter Tier 3, hopefully, knock on wood, perhaps in April we'll be able to have in-person and a hybrid online. We'll see. So mahalo everyone for your participation tonight. I think we peaked at about 130 participants, which is fantastic. So your participation was superb. Thank you, Kailua, and aloha. Stay safe, everyone.
I'll just note also, Bill, even though people were coming and going, the total number registered for this was just about 200, which
Wow.
is really fantastic. And lastly, let's take a group selfie. Good call, Branko. Everybody smile. Ready? 1, 2. Wait, how do I do this? Command Shift 3. All right. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Aloha.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Mahalo.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Chris, is there a way to get the Q&A questions and not lose them?
Oh, yes. Hold on. Let me